In preparation for the celebration of the 250th of Lenox, I decided to write about something that still stands from the days of the first settlers of Lenox. The faith that lives at the church on the hill is a bridge that connects modern Lenox to its glorious past. About 100 years after the Pilgrim Fathers set foot on Plymouth Rock, Lenox was settled by a few brave souls. The year was 1750, and Lenox was a wilderness. These settlers fought the elements but feared attacks from native inhabitants. This fear was so great that the settlement was abandoned until the victory of the British in the French and Indian War in the year 1763, which pushed the natives and the fear away from Lenox. As the settlers returned, it was important to them, as it was to all the early settlers of Massachusetts, that a meeting house for religious services should be built. As is testified by the welcoming sign to the church on the hill, the faithful were gathered in 1769, and the first meeting house was erected in 1770. Just when things began to settle in Lenox, there was a great need for the men to join in a Revolutionary War. The overwhelming feeling of the town was in favor of war. Major General John Patterson and Major Isaiah Eggleston, both members of the Church on the Hill, gathered the men of Lenox into the service, and they all participated in the defense of the city of Boston at the Battle of Bunker Hill. Many of these men are buried in the cemetery. It may be said that these dead have a tale to be told. If you explore the graves and examine their lives, then a story will unfold of a steady advance of progress and affluence. I will return to the dead in a moment, but back to the history of the beautiful building that stands today. Almost as soon, oops, I went too far. Almost as soon as the revolution had been won, there was Shays' Rebellion in 1787 that needed to be squelched. General Patterson had his hand in that. For a failed revolution, there were only 2 executions carried out. Sadly, they were carried out in Lenox. However, before these unfortunates met their end, they were taken to the church on the hill. I think it can be said that they saw something beautiful before they died. By the year 1805, the first meeting house had fallen into disrepair, and the good folks realized that they needed a new building. Benjamin B. Goodrich, a carpenter from Richmond, was hired, and the current church on the hill was erected. When completed, the interior was painted completely white and was dominated by a large window making fine use of natural light. The services conducted there were not exactly comfortable. They allowed no fires in the building, which is probably why it's still standing. Sometimes it was so cold that the sound of feet stomping to keep warm would drown out the sermon. The sermon could be pretty long, so there was plenty of time to freeze to death. The Sabbath was honored by these settlers. They prepared food in advance, and no labor was allowed. This was probably a very good thing because there was so much work to be done to survive that they probably would have given themselves a heart attack. They did not celebrate Christmas because it was considered Papist, so the poor kids did not have that to look forward to. But just around the corner, after the War of 1812 and the Civil War, loomed the Gilded Age. When Lenox became a desired location for the building of cottages, those faithful and long-suffering settlers could finally sell their land for some cold, hard cash. Of particular interest in the history of Lenox, as I alluded to earlier, are the dead interned in those hallowed grounds. Among them are the first settlers, heroes of the Revolutionary War and all the other wars, as well as the wealthy cottagers of the Gilded Age. It is the final resting place of Sergei Koussevitzky and his wife Olga. Near their graves, there is a testimonial in stone given in gratitude by the Israeli Symphony Orchestra. At the base of the stone is a word surrounded by crosses. It is the word Jerusalem. Lenox is very far from Jerusalem, but they know us there.